professional boxer. It's Michael Hennessy Jr.
Whenever I fight someone, I am getting the best version of that fighter. They're coming to take my head off.
Going forward, how does the perfect fight go for Michael Hennessy?
Number one, I want to be world champion one day. That is my dream. I'm chasing that dream every single day, and that's more than enough to get me out of bed.
How much of an impact does religion have on you, and how much do you tap into that in order to dig deep and really motivate yourself?
Like, I've seen it before when I've hurt a fighter and I see that it's hurt them. I get a second wind, and suddenly all this, or no matter how tired I am, I get just a sudden burst of energy to sort of, stick it on them. So you cannot show any weakness whatsoever.
Well, first of all, mate, let's start. How you doing? Lockdown, obviously. How's things?
Yeah, things are good, thanks, Andrew. I'm enjoying lockdown a little bit more than I thought I would. Spending a lot of time with the family and stuff, and there's been less arguments with my sisters and stuff than I thought there would be. So it's all good. We're fortunate to live out in the countryside as well, so it's not, it's not as restricted, not as bad. Like, we've got a lot of space to move about and stuff, get some training done. So it's not too bad.
Yeah, have you been training quite a bit? Obviously, you're a professional sportsman. You've got to keep things ticking over. Has that been something that you've been on?
Yeah, I've been training every single day. I was training too hard at the start, like as if I had a fight coming up. And then the other week, maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, my dad said, all right, we're just going to pull the reins in a bit so we don't burn you out. Just do some fun training,
Yeah, I've been seeing on your sort of stories and your general sort of image in the public is that you are quite a fun, happy guy, man. I'm looking at your face now, mate, and I just want to smile looking at you. Like, you are quite a happy, smiley guy, and I think that's not really what you see from boxers a lot. I mean, I guess we'll go straight from the off. Is that something that people think is an issue? Do you see that as an issue, maybe that you're a bit too much of a nice guy, or is that just you?
I think there's no issue with it at all. That's just me. Like, the main rule in boxing is, never judge a book by its cover. Like, and I don't know how familiar you are with boxing or how much of a fan you are, but like, have you ever heard of Gennady Golovkin?
I haven't, mate. No.
But he's like, if you looked at him outside the ring, he is the biggest the biggest example of never judge a book by its cover, because he's the nicest, most respectful, friendly guy outside the ring, and then when he gets in the ring, he is the biggest monster. Probably one of the biggest monsters in the world and one of the heaviest punchers in the world. But and vice versa, you also get a lot of lads who give it a lot of that, and then they get in there and their ass falls out.
I mean, not to go too sort of mainstream with it, I guess, but obviously one of the biggest, most well-known fighters in the world, I guess, suits that sort of profile as well. Anthony Joshua is a very nice, respectable, kind gentleman, as it seems, outside the ring and in public, and then when it gets in the ring, obviously he switches a mode and turns.
Exactly. It's not really like how you are outside the ring doesn't really affect how you are in the ring, unless you're fighting someone that's probably a bit more mentally weak, less stable, and then you can get in their head if you if you're a bit meaner. But if you're mentally strong, it doesn't really matter.
But you say you're getting in someone's head there? Do you think you're sort of as I said, you do come across like a really nice guy. Do you think that could almost double bluff someone in, he's just a nice guy, I'm not going to wind him up too much, and then when they get in the ring, they're maybe not as fired up as if you called their mum something? Do you know what I mean?
That's true. Like, I don't really think too much into it, but that is true. Like, I'd much rather fight someone who's insulting my family and stuff than some guy wishing me the best and whatever, So
how much do you think, obviously people say that boxing is a sport of the mind, not a sport of the sort of emotion and aggression. How much do you think your character helps you in the ring?
I think it helps me a lot in the ring. I know I've got a lot of character, and I'm very relaxed in the ring. Fighting comes second nature to me, and I suppose that comes from sort of doing it since the age of 11. Yeah, it is a benefit, because if you're more relaxed, you're not going to burn up as much energy being tense, and 12 rounds is a long time, so it's very beneficial. And also having a lot of character is good in the sense that when the going gets tough, you're going to get going.
Well, that's interesting. I guess we'll get onto that later. But you mentioned there you've been fighting since you were 11, since you were a kid. Is fighting something that you've always wanted to do? Obviously, your dad's a well-known boxing man. Has that been, I'm going to be a boxer since day one?
Yeah, literally, since I can remember. I remember, like, obviously going to the shows when I was younger, all my dad's shows since the age of like 4 or 5, and then there's always like little gloves lying about. And when my friends would come over, we'd be boxing in the garden or whatever, in the kitchen sometimes. And yeah, it's just what I've always wanted to do. I wanted to start like a lot earlier than I did, but my dad was like, no, wait till 11. He was hoping that desire to fight would fade as I got older, but it didn't. And then when I turned 11, went straight to the boxing gym. 2 months later, had my first fight. So
did you take to it quite naturally? Was it just, I know what I'm doing here, or was it maybe a little bit more of a longer process than some may think?
Of course, getting the technique and stuff right, that's a longer process. But I wasn't having a tee up came pretty naturally. I think I loved it straight away.
So you've talked in past interviews as well on that about being a bit of a scrapper. You love a bit of a scrap. Is that something that you've had to deal with outside the ring as well? Maybe losing your temper now and again. Is that something you've had to get hold of? Does that cause you any troubles?
I'm very relaxed outside the ring. I never look for any trouble at all. Sometimes you can't avoid it. On a couple of occasions that has happened, but it's never down to me. I'm very level-headed and very calm outside the ring. So,
and in the ring.
And in the ring as well, yeah.
Going forward, then obviously you said you had your first fight 2 months after you started boxing. How was, the amateur game is a mental game in itself. A lot of people, I guess, hear the word amateur and go, oh, they're just dancing and prancing about, the cute boys. Like it's mental, isn't it? First, can you tell us a little bit about what the amateur sort of boxing arena and culture is like, and then a bit about your own sort of amateur career?
All right, so amateur boxing definitely doesn't get enough credit. Amateur boxing very hard, from a young age. There's so much competition, and there's so many boys. You fight most weeks or at least once a month. When you get good and you're going in the tournaments, there's no sort of ducking and diving competition. You get boys enter drawn out of a hat. You box whoever there is. Whereas in the pros, you can sort of steer your career a little bit more, and the amateur game is very tough. There's also a lot of politics involved because, especially when you get to a certain level, the national teams, they have their favourites, their boys who have been there from the very beginning. A lot of the time, whether you get a decision or not will depend on what club you're at. If it's a close fight, they'll just go for the lads who's at the more well-established club with more clout and stuff. So there is a lot of politics involved. But amateur boxing's essential for a young fighter to get their experience, especially before turning professional, without a doubt.
Eddie Hearn, obviously the son of a sort of matchroom boxing, Barry Hearn and that sort of thing. He says that going into fights when he was fighting, obviously he didn't go to become a professional fighter, but going into fights when he was a kid, they actually had to change his name because other fighters thought, Barry Hearn's son here. Let's bash him up and make a name for ourselves. Did you come across any of that where they thought, Mick Hennessy's son here, let's bash him up and I might get a shot at the pro game?
Sander, honestly, all the time. Whenever I fight someone, I am getting the best version of that fighter. They're coming to take my head off. So I could never, although I did, I could never ever go into a fight ill prepared. But saying that, I have done that many a time, and it's only built my character and also like my mental callous, because like I have gone into fights so many times with injuries, illness and whatever, like you would not believe, and it's really sort of strengthened my mindset and stuff. And in the pro game where you have a little bit more time to prepare and stuff, a little bit more notice, it makes me a lot more confident going into those fights. So
yeah, well, you say that you've gone into a few fights ill prepared. I mean, I guess with the way the sort of rate that you fight in the amateur game, that is going to happen now and again, right? Because you're always going to have little niggles, and they say it in football, they say it in boxing, especially if you're fighting at that every week. You're always going to have something, a little niggle, but you've just got to go ahead with it. And obviously, you don't come from the slums, let's say. You come from a nice background. A lot of people have maybe it's a misconceptions about boxers, that you need to come from a really rough and tough background in order to make it pro. Since you don't come from that, firstly, do you agree with that sort of conception? And secondly, what does motivate you? Obviously, there's a big quote, about it's difficult to get out and do your hill runs when you're waking up in silk sheets. It could be argued, people could say that you've woken up in silk sheets. What motivates you to get going?
I don't believe that's true at all. I believe someone who chose to fight and loves fighting is a lot more dangerous than someone who has to fight because they have no other way out. And on the question about, you know, what motivates me to get out of bed in the morning, there's a few. Like, number one, I want to be world champion one day. That is my dream. I'm chasing that dream every single day, and that's more than enough to get me out of bed. And the other motivation is my parents. My parents have sacrificed so much for me to get a good education as well as boxing as well. So they're really a massive motivation to me every day, and they're the main reason I want to succeed. So I can sort of, you know, although I have a comfortable life, I want to give them a life where they never have to think about work ever again, and, you know, they can sort of, you know, just relax and enjoy it rather than, you know, slogging like they have done for like my entire life, just to give me and my sisters a much better life than they had growing up. So
it's easy to go, you know, Mick Hennessy. Well, firstly, how much has your dad had an influence on you and helped you throughout your career? I've seen a lot of interviews of him sort of going, Michael just wants to go full steam ahead, but I've got to relax him a little bit. I've got to relax him. How has that been working with your dad? And then also I want to ask you later about your mum as well, because I'm sure she's had some sort of influence on you as well.
of course, yeah. No, my dad, you know, if I could choose anyone to go to war with me, just one person in the entire world, it'd be him, because I know he'd take a bullet for me, and he's always looking to, you know, he's always looking for me to do the best I can. He's trained me from the very beginning since I couldn't throw a punch. So, yeah, my dad's like, he's my best friend. I spend more time with him than anyone in the world, and I know that he wants me to succeed even more than I do in some ways. So, yeah, he's had an incredible influence on me. Like I said, I've spent so much time with him growing up. People would think that he'd be, probably with his busy schedule and stuff, he'd be an absentee father, but I had just over 100 fights, and I think he missed one of them, and that was it. And that was when Tyson was fighting out in Germany against Vladimir Klitschko.
Obviously, you won. Was it the national semi-finals on the night that your dad was out in Germany with Tyson Fury to win the heavyweight championship? That wasn't a bad night for the Hennessys, was it?
That was probably the best night of our life, because my little sister, she just found out she got into her secondary school that day as well.
Amazing.
I boxed in the national semi-finals, beat a boy who'd previously beat me in the past. Good kid. And then Tyson went on to win the unified heavyweight title of the world. But I remember, funny story, like, my fight was about probably like early afternoon, and after the fight I was buzzing. I was buzzing. I rang him up straight away to tell him I'd done the job and stuff, and no, when he eventually rang me back, he broke down because my trainer sent him a text. He was so proud and so happy, and he believes that, you know, he sort of believed when I came through saying that I'd won, he just said he knew Tyson was going to win that night.
What was it like then? Obviously, I don't want to talk about your dad too much, and I think it's actually interesting because you're a man of you're a man on your own, right? You're your own entity. You're a boxer yourself. You know, before we go on to that, does it ever frustrate you, people talking about your dad, and does it ever frustrate you being your dad's son? Because I can imagine, do you ever feel like you're in his shadow a little bit, or maybe not?
Well, you know, I don't really think too much into it, to be honest with you. I am my dad's son, and I am in his shadow at the moment, but that motivates me more to, you know, push out of the shadow and, you know, one day put him in my shadow. So, like, one day he's Michael Hennessy's dad. That really motivates me, and, you know, it doesn't bother me that I'm in his shadow at the moment. I'm just focusing on me and, you know, trying to be the best I can. And my dreams would still be the same whether I was his son or not. So it's no problem for me at all.
It's a good answer, that. Obviously, then, finally on your dad, he did obviously work with Tyson very closely. Had you ever, you know, had any encounters with Tyson, and did he ever give you any words of wisdom, or any professional boxers in general? You've been around the professional game since you were born, right? Because your dad has been. Have you had any sort of words of wisdom from any of these guys?
I have grown up around a lot of great fighters. Like you say, my dad's, he's promoted quite a few world champions now. And although I was quite young at the time, so I was just new to boxing, and with some of them I wasn't even boxing. So I didn't really speak to them too much about boxing, but there's so many stories my dad's told me about them, which I can learn a hell of a lot from. He's learned a lot from being around them, and he's tried to pass that advice on down to me. Like, he'd be telling me about how every spare second he had, Tyson would be working on his footwork. He'd just go in the gym one day, just shadow boxing 12 rounds just for fun, practicing things. He'd tell me about Carl Froch, like his dedication around boxing, because Carl Froch wasn't the most talented fighter, but he achieved so much in the sport purely down to his work ethic. And my dad used to tell me about that all the time. Like he'd be writing down all his sessions, measuring his progress. He'd write down everything he did that day, and if he had a bad spar or whatever, he'd go back through it and be like, "Oh, that's the reason I didn't feel so good." And he left no stone unturned. So there's been so many stories my dad's told me about these fighters that I've learned from, and I'm using myself.
On that, has there been much confrontation between you two? Because one, they say don't work with family, right? And two, I have seen, obviously in the interviews, researching for this interview, that, as I said, you're all like full steam ahead. No, get me fighting. And your dad's had to, Michael, let's slow down, right? Let's slow down. Has there been any confrontation as far as that's concerned?
There has been confrontation, because he just wants the best for me. He wants me to, put my best foot forward. And so if I'm trying to cut little corners and stuff, he doesn't have it. And it leads to a bit of collision sometimes. But, it is what it is. I know at the end of the day, he just wants the best for me. He wants me to be the best I can be. And so it's love at the end of the day. It's tough love. So although there is confrontation, I understand why he's doing it. And like you said there, there's been a few fights, especially in my pro career, where he sort of said, "All right, let's just leave it." And me being me, just wanted to fight. I love fighting. I've ended up fighting, probably not giving off the best, my best performance is down to it. And so he's right. And from now on, just listen to him 100%.
Well, going back to your amateur career then, before we do go on your professional career, you talk a lot about Ireland, right? You do talk a lot about Ireland and how that's a second home for you. I think you went over there at the age of 12, is that right?
Yeah, I think 11, 12 was my first fight over there.
So how, talk to me about that Ireland and how that shaped you and your development as a fighter.
So Ireland, like you say, is my second home. I absolutely love Ireland. In fact, it's probably the longest. I haven't been there since I turned pro, so that's probably the longest amount of time it's been since of me not going over there. I was actually planning to go out there for quite a few weeks this summer and get a little training camp in, but obviously with COVID and stuff at the moment, that can't be done. But yeah, I went over to Ireland at the age of 11. I have a lot of family over there, a lot of family friends. Had my first fight, but I was spending, I've been spending a lot of time over in Ireland, and I'll have like two or three fights over there or whatever while I'm over there, like on school holidays and what have you. So that's really been a benefit to me, because getting that experience and being around top Irish fighters, you sort of develop a relaxedness around fighting, because then it's like having a cup of tea. That's one main difference I've noticed with Ireland and England. In a changing room in England, it's like very tense, and they're worried, like a little bit nervous and what have you. But in Ireland, it's just sort of like turn up, like get your wraps on, no warm up, nothing, just jump in the ring, have a tear up, and that's it. So that's really molded me as a fighter and made me a lot more relaxed in the ring.
Talking about you as a mold of a fighter, we said that you love a scrap. On your sort of boxing style, is that something that you've had to develop, or is that something that came to you naturally? And what would you say for the people watching that haven't seen you before? What is your boxing style?
I have a low left hand. It didn't always start out like that. When my dad was first teaching me, it was tight guard. He said everyone needs to know how to fight with a tight guard in case you're under fire, and you can cover up and try and take as little as possible. But that gradually molded as I got older and watching some of the greats like Mayweather, Roy Jones Jr. and stuff. I started copying them a little bit, and we've sort of developed that style as well. So I can box southpaw as well. It's like I watch so much boxing, and I work on a lot of stuff. So I can fight every which way really. I'm gradually improving every day, and it'll be a massive advantage to be able to adjust my style in the ring. If because one style works for one fighter but not another, you need to be able to adjust and change styles sometimes in a fight, because sometimes a fighter will work out what you're doing, they'll adjust, and you need to adjust again. So
exactly, and that's fantastic that you do have that, because you do see a lot of fighters, styles make fights, and if you've got a variety of styles, you can fight a variety of fighters, right? So you're almost then in your mind, bring me anyone, I'll fight them however they're going to get beat, right? And that's fantastic from you. And do you think that comes to you naturally, the ability to fight in a variety of different ways, or is that something that you've really tried to work on over the years in order to give you that advantage?
Yeah, no, I've really had to work on it. I I don't believe anything sort of comes 100% naturally to someone. You have to, if you want to achieve something, you have to work on it. And I've spent so much time, working on my technique, whether it be with the low hand, whether it be tight guards, southpaw. I spent the way southpaw came about was I injured my left hand, which is obviously my jab hand, and I was out for quite a few months. And during that period, just started working on my southpaw lead hand, and that's how that came about. So it was sort of, although I couldn't work properly, I found a way to work, and that's another one of the things my dad's taught me. Just because somewhere's injured doesn't mean you down tools. You find a way to work without that. If you hurt your right hand, work the left. So yeah, I've worked a hell of a lot on all those styles, and I'm finding it very beneficial, especially now that I'm sort of got a lot better at them. It also puts the opponent off a little bit.
Yeah, well, I guess, yeah, on that then, how far are you? How far through your development are you? How much more do you have to do? And how high do you think you could go? You said that you want to be sort of champion of the world at some point. Do you think I can bloody do that? Or I just wanted to ask you, is there anything in your mind that goes, can I do that? Or do you never have that self-doubt?
I never have that self-doubt. I believe 100% I'll be a world champion one day, whether it takes, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. I know I'll become a world champion one day. But, it's obviously going to be a long journey. And, I'm like when you said about the development, I'm nowhere near the finished article, nowhere near. You never stop learning, ever. The day you stop learning is the day you die. So every day I'm sort of looking for ways to improve. And there are so many. And, also perfecting the things that I've already learned, because you need to repeat these things over and over so that they become second nature. And if there's a period where you stop repeating them, it's muscle memory. Your body will forget. So yeah, never ever stop learning. I've got a long way to go, but it's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to going up the levels, step by step. I want to win every single belt, at every single level, so that when I'm fighting for a belt, I know that I've already sort of achieved that level below and that I'm ready for that step up, rather than sort of, you see a lot of fighters nowadays, they're fighting at a certain level and they jump up probably a bit too far too quick. I want to go every single step of the way.
And that sounds, I don't want to go back to it too much, but that does sound like a bit of your dad speaking, because that is career management, and that is a wiser head on a young man, right? You're not a boy anymore. You're 20 odd. You're a young man. So I guess, again, you speaking there, you've got that intelligence, you've got that wisdom that a lot of other fighters won't have, purely because of who you've grown up around. And I think, just for an observer, obviously I've done my research on you, but learning about you now in this conversation, it's very clear to see that you understand, just now maybe, because as you said before, you maybe tried to battle your dad a little bit, but the words and the wisdom coming in from your dad and the sort of career management and direction of your career is starting to become very clear to you, and therefore clear to me. And I think that's refreshing to see a young fighter, a young sportsman, a young athlete, and a young man have such a clear direction and such a determination, because I think a lot of people lack that nowadays, right? And you're never going to get anywhere successful without that determination. And it seems, despite your background, you do have, that grit.
100%. Like, all these years of my dad sort of telling me what it takes to become a champion, I haven't been doing that, to be honest with you. I've got a lot to improve on. I've got a lot more. I need to get a lot more disciplined, but I understand that, and I know what I've got to do, and I will do that, especially after we come back from this coronavirus and the shows start coming up again. I'm looking for, I've been working so much, and I'm looking for step ups, because mentally right now I've never been in a better place, to be honest with you.
When you say, when we come back from COVID, when do you plan on getting back fighting again? Obviously, we've seen sport go and come back slightly now, but, combat sports, UFC, never really went, did it? And so when do you plan as a boxer on getting back in the ring?
I've been told that potentially August 15th or September sometime. Okay. But, there's no way of knowing. Whenever the board is satisfied and whenever the government say we'll be ready, like, there's dates there for Channel 5 and all me and my dad's fighters. So
finishing up on your amateur career then, because I do want to get into your professional career, but finishing up on your amateur career, you said that you obviously never quite won the nationals, right? And you'd on the night that your dad won with Tyson Fury in Germany, the championship, you had won a semi-finals. Now that leaves me and everyone listening or watching thinking, what the bloody hell happened in the finals?
yeah, the final. So what happened was I was quite tight at the weight at the time, and for the final, it was so where before they were all like afternoon shows, like morning weigh-ins, afternoon shows. This one was an evening weigh-in and show, and I didn't eat anything all day, and I got in the ring, gets a really good fighter, boxed well the first round, won the first round, and then he came on top on the second and third, and I did that. I said I've had a lot of dodgy decisions and stuff. That was a fair decision. He won that fight, and I can only blame myself for sort of maybe not blame myself because I felt like I was growing at the time anyway. I was being disciplined and stuff around my food, but I was too big for the weight. And shortly after, not long after, I ended up moving up a weight, like in the next championships with the older boys. And I felt a lot better for it, to be fair. I remember I had in the Londons, I had 3 really good fights. So I was 16 at the time. I'm the young. So how boxing work is with boxing, it's like all the 99 boys fight each other, all the 2000 boys fight each other, etc. I'm November. This time when I moved up a weight in an age category, it was like it's 99 and 98 boys. So I had 3 fights in a week against 3 18-year-olds. First fight, boxed brilliant, be a really good kid. I was weighing about 2 kilos under the weight limit, and this kid was a lot bigger, but I boxed brilliant, got the win. He did get a headbutt though, which sort of opened my eye up. Then in the second fight, again, great fight, got the win, boxed well. And then the third fight in the London final, bearing in mind I was the youngest in the age category, and at that age is quite a lot of a difference with maturity and stuff. I boxed this lad, but what happened was my dad wanted to pull me out, and I started crying, saying, "Dad, I worked so hard for this. Please don't pull me out." So what we ended up doing, because my eye was really bad, I put some makeup on, and so I could get past the doctor because the eye was really bad. Got in the ring, and literally the first punch the kid threw, all the makeup came off, and the ref sort of stopped the fight and looked at me. He was like, "How on earth has that come up?" But anyway, I kept going on and kept fighting. I lost on points, fair and square. And then but that is one of the scenarios where I know I'm cut out for boxing. I know I'm tough enough. I know I've got what it takes mentally, and I've got the toughness. And another reason I know that is because that kid that beat me in that London final that day is 2 years older than me, or 23 months, whatever it was, because he was a January 98 boy. I went away, did my GCSEs, regrouped, and then I ended up meeting him in the London finals again the next year. I ended up beating him. So I know mentally I'm a very strong individual. Not much sort of phases me, and these experiences I've had have made me very strong and confident in myself.
Would you say that final loss was your biggest heartbreak?
I've had that's definitely not, because I've been in finals where I felt I won. That one, it was that national final was a genuine loss. So it's a bit, although it hurts, it's a bit, what can I do? I did what I could. But I've had a lot of heartbreaks where I've been in tears before. I'll give you a few examples. I remember, I'd probably say the biggest heartbreak was to do with the Commonwealth Games. So this was after my GCSEs. I just came back. An England coach came down to watch me spar because they were looking at me for the Commonwealth Games, the Youth Commonwealth Games. So they came to look at me, and they were like, "Oh, you're going to the Commonwealth Games 100%. You're our man." And then I sparred. I sparred in front of this England coach. He was like, "Oh, come down, train with the GB boys." Because at this time it was still that age category where I was 2 years younger than some of the lads. So I had it in my mind that I was going to the Commonwealths, and then the age category flipped again to how it normally was, and they've got a golden boy my age and weight, and I knew from the start that they were going to send him. And off the record, one of the coaches told me that. So they were like, look, he said to me, look, they're going to send this kid, but we'd love you to come on the training camps to help them prepare and stuff. And, you know, we're going to have a serious look at you for the Europeans. But I wasn't interested in that. I knew I wanted the Commonwealth Games. So I knew they were giving him that position. So obviously, lucky for me, I got, I'm half Irish, got that other route into the Commonwealth Games. And, you know, I spend a lot of time out there anyway. You know, I've got a lot of family out there. My coach, Owen Murphy, I'm very, very close with him. He basically is family to me. I've been boxing for his club since the age of 11, St Monica's. So I went out there. I won the Ulster Championships, which is Northern Ireland, which is who go to the Commonwealth Games. That's a good first step. Then I won the 9 counties, which is Northern Ireland plus like 3 other counties. I think it was 3 or 4 fights in the week, and won all of them. Won the Commonwealth qualifiers. I was buzzing, like, yes, you know, I'm going to the. It was in the Bahamas at the time as well. I really wanted to go out there, win gold, you know, and beat the England boy as well.
What's he doing now? What's that fella doing now?
Yeah, he's doing very well, to be fair. He's on the. I don't know if it's podium squad, but he's on the GB team, and they're looking at him for the Olympics. So I actually boxed him when I was like 14, 15 years old. I beat him over in Ireland, gave him a standing count. So no doubt that's probably a rematch that will happen in the future.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to set up, mate. I want to see that. That's going to be...
He's waiting for the Olympics, which he will go to, whether it's 2020 or 24. He's a very good fighter, but yeah, 100% in the pros. I believe that'll be a great rematch in the future, because there was a bit of needle there to, you know, at the time.
What is, I mean, you've had 2 fights since then. Who's the most difficult fighter you've had to deal with, or the most difficult punch where you thought, oh, bloody hell, that was a shock? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, what's it called? I'd say Alistair Warren. I'd say Farhad Hazratada was probably the second hardest. That was a 4-rounder. We avoided 4 rounds from the start, but that's all they offered us. They said you can have 4 rounds or nothing. So we're like, okay, fine. But we always like 6 rounds. And I remember the week before my fight in Bolton, my 3rd fight with Alistair Warren, I had an opponent pull out. And it was like everyone was booked up for that weekend. We couldn't find an opponent. It got to a stage where you're not allowed to fly in foreign opponents. Alistair Warren was the only one available. So they contacted him. They said, look, yeah, 100%, we'll come up, we'll have the fight. And the only thing is, he's overweight. He's 12 stone at the moment. If you've seen Alistair Warren, you know he's a big man and a handful. He causes a lot of upsets against some, you know, promising prospects. He got a win against Marcus Morrison, who's a great fighter, matchroom boxer. So, and yeah, that was an extremely grueling fight. I got the victory, grinded it out, but I had to dig deep. It was he wouldn't leave me alone for the entire 6 rounds.
You talk about digging deep. We've talked about your motivation, right? We've talked about you know, you choosing to fight, and that being a more dangerous element than someone who's forced to fight. And I think that's a good point. But on digging deep, before your fights, you wear a cross, you know, and you seem to be fairly religious. How much of an impact does religion have on you, and how much do you tap into that in order to dig deep and really motivate yourself?
The thing is, I'm not actually baptized or anything, but you know, my parents wanted me to sort of wait till I got older to decide for myself. Same with my sisters, and that cross was given to me by my Aunt Doreen. She recently passed away, so I always wear that as like just to, you know, have that comfort of knowing she's there. But I am, although not baptized or anything, I'm a very religious person. I read the Bible and everything, and 100%, you know, I want to get baptized one day and what have you when I get the time and after all this. So
Chris Eubank talks a lot about in those moments of when you're almost down and out. Right, when you're almost, I can't go on anymore. Chris Eubank talks about getting power from a higher source, right? And from actually looking externally rather than you've got nothing left internally and getting power from externally. Do you think that's something that you have done or feel like you have in your arsenal to be able to do?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe everyone has that in their power if they're mentally right. A lot of the time it's a lot more than physical. A lot boxing, a lot of it is mental. Like you'll get a guy who's training every day and what have you, but mentally he's not all there, and he'll like fade a lot quicker than someone who probably hasn't trained as hard or whatever. So, and at the same time, when the going gets tough, you really do need to, find something inside you. You need to dig as deep as you can inside yourself to sort of, grind out that extra burst or whatever that could be the difference in a fight. So yeah, 100%.
When on what occasions, and what were those experiences like?
Many occasions where I felt like, I haven't got anything left, but I can feel them coming on top, and I have to sort of grind it out and find something, because otherwise they're going to walk all over me. It's like the old saying goes: if you show them weakness, you give them strength. You do. Like I've seen it before when I've hurt a fighter, and I see that it's hurt them. I get a second wind, and suddenly all this, or no matter how tired I am, I get just a sudden burst of energy to sort of, stick it on them. So you cannot show any weakness whatsoever.
Yeah, no. And then obviously going into your most recent fight then as well, you fought at York Hall, and that is the foundation of British boxing, really, isn't it? That is, for the people watching that aren't too familiar with boxing, you might know Wembley, you might, all these massive places, but York Hall, Bethnal Green, is a proper foundation of British boxing. All the big boxers that you guys might watch on TV and know of now, they fought at York Hall. What was that like fighting at such a historic and sort of momentous arena?
Yeah, York Hall was incredible. It's probably my favourite venue I boxed at. I boxed out in Saudi Arabia in front of 10,000 people, but York Hall, I think it takes the cake for my favourite venue, because not only is it so iconic and stuff, it was sort of like a homecoming for me as a professional boxer, because all my fights were either up north or abroad. And this one, I really could get all my friends and family to come and support, because Bethnal Green it's not close, but it's not too far, like an hour. So yeah, it was incredible, and that was probably my favourite fight today, because it's just like it's so compact and everyone's on top of you and watching, and it's just it's an incredible feeling. That's definitely my best performance to date. The one at York Hall.
Going forward, how does the perfect fight go for Michael Hennessy?
At the moment, I'm working on my power quite a lot at the moment. Like all my fights, I've been 19, and I'm not the most mature just yet. So that power will come. But yeah, at the moment, I'm just working on trying to make it as easy as possible, by outboxing them. And if the knockout comes, the knockout comes, because 9 times out of 10, the knockout shot happens when you least expect it, and you've put the least amount into it without even thinking about it. So yeah, I sort of, after my third fight against Alistair Warren, I went back to the drawing board, because I was loading up a little bit, trying to hurt him too much. Went back to the drawing board and sort of focused on my boxing a little bit, not worrying about the knockout at all. Like just throwing my shots, moving around, and yeah, it worked a treat. We went right back to the drawing board, working on my technique, perfecting that. And that fight, it was a landslide, 6-0. So, and my best performance without a doubt against a really tough fighter, like real tough, durable fighter. So yeah, the progression's there.
And then finally, I think it's been a great conversation. I've learned a lot about you, and hopefully everyone out there has as well. Going forward, as I said, what would you say to firstly everyone that's watching and to people that don't know about Michael Hennessy? What would you say about Michael Hennessy and his future in boxing, and as well, what would you say to any opponents that future opponents that are watching?
I say, I've got a long way to go, but I've got so much more to give, and I will be successful in boxing 100%. I'm improving every single day, working every single day, slowly but surely, and my time will come, and fingers crossed it does, and I'm sure it will. To any future opponents, you see you.
Michael, Thanks so much for coming on the show, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you, and obviously we'll be backing you in the future fights here on the sit down. So thanks for coming on, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Xander. Thanks a lot. My pleasure.
Cheers, guys, for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy it. Do like the video, subscribe as well, and stick around. There'll be many more interviews coming in the future. So cheers.